So I go on vacation here this coming Friday, and I got to go fly, which has been great since there's been a lot of news and a lot of discourse in regards to recent aviation incidents. So kind of sweating bullets here, but it had me thinking a little bit this past week, and I haven't really consolidated my thoughts on the subject, and I'm going to be touching this in as reasonable a way as I can and trying to put my thoughts into word format, word salad, let's be honest, because of how my speech pattern works. But it's something that I feel strongly about, and it's something that I haven't quite wrapped my head around. Just one of those things where I feel that I'm not on the same page as everyone else, and it is a little concerning to me. So bear with me while I try to expedite my thoughts on the subject. So I used to do a lot more military content, and I make it abundantly clear I'm not military. I am not, in any way, shape, or form a veteran. Hasn't stopped people accusing me of stolen valor, but that's beside the point. That's just the internet. I've noticed a really disturbing trend where it feels like a lot of the veteran support is performative. And I know this is going to come across as a five-head, what do you mean, Kip? Are you just now figuring this out? Taking time to reflect after recent incidents, obviously, and coming to terms with really the internet and VTubing sphere being no different than, mainstream media, celebrities, etc. Putting on a personality, putting on a face. Right? I'm kind of the weird one who breaks the mold because I'm very much genuine to a fault. I definitely overshare a lot of things, but it's concerning to me because it feels like people aren't taking it seriously, and it almost feels like they're backtracking on rhetoric that's been the case for the past 50 years. I mean, we've talked about during a number of military reactions, Fat Electrician, Laser Pig, Captain Slicer Axe, which I felt I was incredibly disrespectful on. No excuse, regardless if I'm tired or not. Where Vietnam was kind of a turning point, at least for the U.S. in perception of the military. And I think this does in some ways go hand in hand with the blue collar, white collar shift where, well, who wants to be a tradesman? You should be an investment banker, right? The kind of shift in bias towards, the white collar jobs, lines of work, etc. And I think those go hand in hand because generally, I used to work with someone who was former Army in finance. I mean, it's not that, military personnel can't have white collar jobs, quote unquote, by any means. I think public perception would be like, oh, yeah, well, you used to work in the Navy. Clearly you're working, some sort of blue collar work. I think that's just more of a people and perception thing and misunderstanding thing. Sorry, I said word salad, trying to get to the point. But it feels like even with these perceptions, at least in the U.S., I, was raised, make sure you're respecting veterans, right? Do you necessarily need to salute them? No. In fact, as far as I'm aware, it's just ingenuous if you're not military and salute them, right? But just make sure you respect them, right? Obviously, discourse in regards to thanking them versus not thanking them. It all comes down to, yes, etiquette, but also just basic respect and human decency, right? At the end of the day, regardless of whatever you think, regardless of wherever you stand, right? They're doing a job. They chose to do a job. They chose to go do a thing that they believed in. Maybe even they did it for just the paycheck, right? And it has its own issues with, superior officers, that can be just awful to deal with. Military bureaucracy, right? Actively withholding upgrades and stuff, which Fat Electrician has gone over in multiple of his videos. It's very odd for me because I feel like I'm pretty grounded when I actually am able to take a breath, right, and look at a situation. And it feels like there's not a lot of grounding in regards to the military, even on social media. I've had several veterans who I regularly talk to express massive concerns and ultimately be very frustrated in regards to four tech bros just being given rank, right? No skill or merit. We're just gonna reward you rank, right? And I bring that up briefly, not necessarily to harp on the whole skill and merit argument, but how odd that is. and how absolutely little coverage I have seen in regards to how disrespectful this is to active military personnel who have to go through boot camp, who have to go through basic training, who have to go through trials and tribulations and trauma bond, blood, sweat, tears, right? So it's been odd to me. Individuals who I would have expected would have spoken up about this are very radio silent on that subject specifically, as well as the military just currently not getting paid. There's the rhetoric of, well, something donations. Look, I'm going to be honest. That's not the point of this channel. I'm very much outside of my depth here. Having conversations, I'm under the impression that that is technically illegal because it appropriates funds before it's actually able to be signed off on. So that comes with its own thing, as well as the actual amount that U.S. military personnel actually get is going to be very minimalistic. So once again, this is one of those situations where I look at and I don't really know how to respond to it. And I guess I'm kind of putting this out here to verbalize my thoughts for one, to state kind of my concerns in regards to military on the internet. And it's not the military's fault. I want to clarify that. Bro, there's basic things. You, dear chatter, you, dear viewer, going to your job and not getting paid. Why would you want to do that job? But in this case, you're kind of forced to do the job because you're contracted, right? You are. Branches can insert their own lingo here. So part of my hesitancy and a lot of my frustration on that, and I recently ended up doing a laser pig video, which it seems like it got some decent reception. It seems like there is a genuine interest for me to continue covering military content. I don't know what I'm mixed, right? Because on one hand, I like covering the topics. I like being able to think about things. I like being able to kind of toy with subjects and kind of, okay, but why is it this way? How does this lead to this? Why was this the action? Could there have been a better action, right? It's honestly, these are conversations I have in my everyday life. I choose to have less of them because I do choose to have fun, right? We can react to, funny duels, movies, Minecraft let's plays and stuff like that, Team Sky, and I like being able to have fun, especially where I am kind of forced into a crucible of politics pretty much every day at this point, whether someone's being sarcastic or not. But I wanted to express and vent my frustrations and concerns on the subject because it ultimately feels like there's a need that isn't being met, and something rhetoric, support our troops or you're un-American, right? Is generally the rhetoric that is kind of spread in the U.S. and has been for the past approximately 50 years, right? But we hit a point where it feels like that's not, that like the inverse is being shown, right? I can tell you that, I'm not going to do something or I will do something, right? I can tell you I will be streaming Dark Souls 2. But if I never stream Dark Souls 2, right, what does that say? And that's the part that it's the actions being separate from words, right? On the internet, you can bring out a ukulele and make an apology. But unless you actually do something about it, unless you actually stick to that and then follow through with actions, follow through with an action plan, does the apology really mean anything? Sure, the sentiment is there, but there's no follow through. So a lot of my concern is that it feels like a lot of veterans have been duped, hoodwinked, kind of used even. And I don't like it. I think that when it comes down to the military currently not being paid, and I am the only person I know to regularly ask, are they actually getting paid now? I think there's a problem. And I think that we should be relying on military channels, military influencers. We should be relying on, veteran advocates to speak up about the issues. And it feels like there's a gap. And I think that's concerning to me. So I don't know where to really go with this, if I'm being completely honest. This is one of those I'm a little outside of my depth. Obviously, because of the subject matter at hand that I'm lightly touching on, there's going to be a lot of controversy, a lot of discourse, a lot of discord even. And ultimately, at the end of the day, come to your own educated conclusion. I wanted to at least do my part to just ask, is this just how this is? Like, is this one of those things where you will say you're a veteran advocate, you'll say that, yeah, no, we should support our troops, but the moment they're not getting paid or the moment it's inconvenient, we just kind of throw our hands up and just say, nah? I want to make sure we're on the same page, because if that's the reality, I think I'm cool being a small channel. I can't get behind that logic. Yeah, I don't know. Just trying to make sense of a very awkward situation. I've rambled about it. Hopefully I've tried to at least be somewhat clear and transparent. I don't know. I'll try to do more military reactions as I can. I'm very hesitantly trying to do more of them to try and gauge and test the waters. Because at the end of the day, I do want to have more fun with what I do, and I also need to focus on growth in what ways I can. It's just one of those that I'm kind of lost in the swouse, if you will. But thank you everyone for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I do appreciate everyone who has been super patient and just been super legit. Throughout the 3 years ish that I just had my 3-year anniversary, the 3 years ish that I've been doing this, I really do appreciate it, and I'm in a very fortunate situation, and I know I can't change the world. I just want to do what I can to look myself in the mirror every night and say I did what I could to ask if we're really okay with just wanting to support veterans in the military, but the moment that it's suddenly inconvenient to throw that to the wayside. I also missed the Marine Corps 250th, I believe. Happy 250th Marine Corps, and I will see you all in the next one.